Hi, I'm Kath from KathleenRobb.com, and thank you so much for joining me for this conversation, which is all about why estrogen has everything but nothing to do with a midlife health check. So, heaps of women approach me in their midlife and tell me that they're in perimenopause, they got all those symptoms, and they think they should get their estrogen levels checked. And what I explain to them is that estrogen has nothing but everything to do with their health at that point in time. So I really do believe strongly that it's super important to get a really thorough check of our health regularly every year, but particularly in midlife if you haven't before, just to see what the lay of the land is. But estrogen is not the first marker that I'm watching on a blood test. And the reason is in perimenopause in particular, well, perimenopause and menopause are not a medical condition to begin with. They're a normal rite of passage, they're a normal transition in our life. But during perimenopause and around this midlife time, it's expected that estrogen is going to be on a massive roller coaster. So I could have a blood test and my estrogen levels could be up here. And then a couple of weeks later, see my practitioner to discuss the results. But on that day, my estrogen level could be down here and could have plummeted. So the level of estrogen in a one single moment of time is not that significant because we know it's on a roller coaster. But why estrogen is relevant in midlife is that the fluctuations it's going through and the eventual decline that it will ultimately go through in menopause leads to other health change. It has a knock-on effect. So midlife health check is really vital for seeing how that estrogen is impacting everything else. Because estrogen is a great buffer for our health. But when that buffer starts to be removed or behave erratically, our other health markers can feel it. So one of the key areas to look out for in midlife is what all the other hormones are doing. When one hormone changes, we often see changes in the others as well. So midlife is a key time to ensure that hormonal balance is happening across the board, because hormones being dysregulated, other than estrogen, can be disguised as perimenopausal symptoms. A number of things can cause hot flushes, not just estrogen. And a number of things can cause weight gain and brain fog and all those other things. So I like to look at fasting blood sugar and insulin to see how well that insulin is responding to the sugar and if that person might have insulin resistance, which is super common in perimenopause. I also like to do a full thyroid hormone panel. Often practitioners will just test the TSH, which is the thyroid stimulating hormone. It's a hormone that goes to the thyroid to stimulate it, but doesn't actually show us if there's antibodies attacking the thyroid or if the thyroid function and conversion to active thyroid hormone is optimal. So I like to do a full thyroid panel, including thyroid antibodies. I also like to get a saliva test of cortisol over 4 or 6 times over the course of a 24-hour period. So it's common for people when they're undergoing stress to have a cortisol check first thing in the morning, like 8 o'clock in the morning. But cortisol has a circadian rhythm. We expect it to be high in the morning and then to drop down low at night. So it's high in the morning to get us out of bed, drops down low at night so that we can get a good night's sleep. But for some people, it might be perfectly normal in the morning and then just plateau, not actually drop down. Other people, it's normal and then it peaks in the afternoon because of a stressful job. Other people, it runs high all day or low all day or goes in a completely different pattern. So we don't just want a single point time for cortisol. We want a series of checks over the course of a day. Also, DHEAS hormone is really helpful, which converts into other hormones. And occasionally we do want to check the sex hormones, including estrogen, progesterone, luteinizing hormone, follicle stimulating hormone, and testosterone. So they can play a role, but it's the other hormones that I actually look at first. We also need to realize that from midlife onwards, cardiometabolic health becomes increasingly important for women. So before perimenopause, women have a lower rate of cardiometabolic issues than men, but this is largely because estrogen buffers us and protects us. So without that, we need to pay attention. So this includes getting your blood pressure checked, cholesterol or lipid panel, liver function test, and homocysteine, etc., and inflammatory markers such as CRP. And estrogen also protects our bone health, so it's really good to start keeping an eye on our bone density. So parathyroid hormone increases when we're not having enough calcium in order to direct the bones to break down their tissue to release calcium. So that's a good marker. In the liver function test, one of the markers, ALP, it can be related to liver health, but it can also indicate bone turnover. So if that's elevated, that's worth looking further. And of course, a bone density scan. And of course, in midlife, we want to make sure that we're doing regular checks on our breast tissues to make sure there's no lumps and getting our mammograms. So there's lots of things that are really worth checking out as midlife females. And don't be too distracted by what estrogen's doing, because it is going for a ride right now. But if we have all those other things in place, it's super helpful. And of course, last but not least, even though this is not particularly a midlife issue, anytime we're having a thorough health check, it's really helpful to check key nutrients that have accurate blood markers available. So some nutrients we can't really get an accurate reading from a blood test, such as magnesium's not all that accurate, but vitamin B12, vitamin B6, zinc, copper, an iron panel, vitamin D, all these things we can get a really helpful reading, and they all play a massive role in mental health, immune function, energy levels, cognitive function. So if you've got the perimenopause brain fog, super important to see what your nutrients are doing. Or if you feel like you're depleted and you don't have the energy, also super important. So I hope this helps you when you're talking to your health practitioner to get a really good thorough checkup. It doesn't hurt to find out everything that's going on in your body, so that if anything is slightly out of range or even just not optimal, you can start nurturing it and looking after that marker. And it gives you a great baseline to monitor annually from here on out. Okay, I hope that was helpful. See you the next time. Bye.